VA has already embarked down the path of DevSecOps. We have the tools. We have orchestration tools. We have containers. We have a cloud environment. We're refining the governance model around those products to make them more sustainable.
The great game changer here is really positioning ourselves for the customers. And I think as you see our product line transformation and the way we're trying to position IT, I think IT is really trying to rise up and meet the customer organizations to figure out what they need from us, not how do we need to organize ourselves.
Focusing in on a technology is where we see people tripping up, as opposed to focusing in on the concept of data sharing and the availability of data. I think the most important thing to consider with data is I am using this data and ingesting it or putting it out downstream. Who is using that data, and am I making it easy for them to use that data?
We see big programs like GBSD, which is all nuclear ground work that is literally embracing DevSecOps for the entire program. So it's completely built on that platform one stack. That's the kind of stuff we want to see. A broader scale, the DevSecOps should be the default. And I always say that it's almost borderline criminal for us as government employees to not use DevSecOps in 2020.
Good morning and welcome to our Disruptive DevSecOps virtual event. We're so glad you joined us this morning. My name is Michael Hoffman and I'm the president of Government CIO Media and Research. We are the leading solutions resource in federal IT. So like I said, we are excited to have you here this morning and join us on a topic that is really transforming the way government is tackling federal IT. From across agencies, and you're going to get to see some of the leaders from these places, whether it's from the United States Air Force, Army Futures Command, all the way to the Department of Veterans Affairs and Health and Human Services, and the Department of Homeland Security. My team has been working on covering this topic for quite a few years now, whether it's on our podcasts, our videos, and some of our events here. So what we've done is asked our researchers, our editors to come together and select some of the top thought leaders at these agencies, bring them together this morning into this afternoon, and talk about some of these topics. Some of those topics include infrastructure as code, as well as artificial intelligence and others. Before we move on to our first speakers, what I'd like to do is really thank our sponsor, Dell Technologies. Without their support for this morning, it wouldn't be possible. So I really want to thank Dell Technologies for supporting us this morning. And you're going to get to get a chance to hear from one of their leaders in this space this morning. So I also want to encourage everybody who's watching from home to take part in social media in using the hashtag DigitalCIO. We want to make sure too that everybody who's watching has a chance to ask questions. So below the video player that you see this morning, you have a chance to ask questions, and those questions will be sent directly to our editors, who will send them over to our moderators and include you this morning. So like I said, we're really excited for this morning. We have a great audience who's a part of this, so we really want to push forward that discussion there. So without further ado, I want to hand off to our first panel, which is going to be a keynote with two of the top leaders in the Air Force. Both the Chief Software Officer as well as the Deputy CIO. That panel is going to be moderated by our Managing Editor, Amy Kluber. So with that, Amy, I'm going to hand it off to you and you can take it away.
Great, thanks, Mike, and welcome everybody. I'm glad to have everybody here and to introduce our keynote panel for this morning. Joining me is Air Force Deputy CIO Lauren Knausenberger and Chief Software Officer Nicholas Shalon. So thanks so much for joining us. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes getting to know more about the DevSecOps initiative at the Air Force and what that means for DoD at large and other agencies. So welcome, Lauren.
All right, thank you. Great to be here. And I know that Nick is on his way. I will share he was, doing something very heroic yesterday and cut his hand. So he's typing slowly to get into the chat room, but he'll be here to join us momentarily, and we can jump right in.
All right. Well, you know, when we talk about innovation in government, one of the first things many think about is developing software faster. Obviously, this is your forte, Nicholas's forte. The Air Force is seen as a leader here in DoD overall with the DevSecOps initiative. So, Lauren, we'll start with you. What does DevSecOps really mean for the service and the agency at large?
Sure. So, I mean, really, it means the same for the Air Force that it does for most businesses, that you finally pulled together the folks from the development side, the security engineers, the IT ops folks to work together to drive value very quickly to our warfighters. And it's been a journey because especially in the DoD, you know, we love our process. And for a long time, that waterfall process, you know, it really was ingrained. You know, it was almost like a flight checklist. You know, people are going to die if you don't sequentially go through your requirements and your design and your development and your testing and probably, you know, some pretty serious rework and testing. And so really, as things have progressed, you know, we have shown consistently that we can deploy code multiple times a day to the warfighter at the tactical edge at all levels of classification. And that has been huge. And I will share with you that a lot of the movement really started with Kessel Run and that first problem that a couple folks have heard about, where we used to plan our in-air refueling ops using a set of whiteboards and manual calculations. And, you know, Eric Schmidt said something along the lines of, hey, there should be an app for that to the operational commander who was out there. And next thing we knew, you know, we had deployed this and we're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a week in fuel. And, you know, it's just gone from there, you know, just picking new problems, refining processes, and really just driving velocity. And the teams have continued to learn so much through that process. And I will share that, you know, I got really close with Kessel Run when they started running into a few roadblocks. How are we going to get buy-in from the testing community that everything that we're doing in an automated way in our CI/CD pipeline every single time we commit code? How do we show people that this really does, you know, meet the standard that we need for the vast majority of our non-operational testing? And then also with the security approvals, just making sure that instead of having some hard gate once things are done, you know, you've had the security engineers involved throughout. You have all of this automated scanning that's happening throughout. You have a really great design with hackers on the team who are tabletopping you and basically providing insight during the design phase. You know, by the time you're done with that product, there shouldn't be a whole lot you have to do to get it accredited and ready to run on the network. And I will share that I think we have Nick now, and Nick, I was telling the guys that it probably took you a little while to log in because of your brave feats of heroism yesterday, in which you impaled your hand, so you're typing slowly. But
I tell people that you stabbed me with a knife. It sounds better, but yes, I'm sorry for being
wound.
But thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be able to talk with you about all the great work you've been doing. And you know, we wouldn't be here without everything you put together for us when I started. So I wanted to thank you again for everything you've done for the department.
Well, thanks, Nick. And back at you, I was just sharing a little bit about kind of the journey and kind of where we got started. And Nick, you've been so incredible at driving this at scale, which is, you know, really the hard part. You know, once you have a couple of great successes, how do you kind of knock that out of the park for the whole enterprise? So I'd love to hand it over to you to, you know, pick up the story.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nick.
no, absolutely. So I guess, you know, just to quickly provide a little bit of insight, I think obviously I agree that it's hard to scale, but it's very hard to get started. I would actually argue it's harder to get the ball rolling than pushing it down the hill and get a little bit more momentum. So I would certainly not say that, you know, it is easier to scale than getting started. But I guess everything is hard in DoD, right? So whatever. What I know is critical, and that's why I think we are really helping teams move faster now, is by removing the impediments for them to get started and jump on the DevSecOps wagon, because we know how complex and difficult it's been for teams like Kessa and others to start from day one and build something that really gets us with a continuous ATO model. And I think it's very difficult, right, to reinvent the wheel and build all the basic layer that are mandated and necessary for us to be secure. And so the cloud and the platform work is foundational, particularly the cyber stack and the way we can continuously assess our cyber posture. So I guess the key for us was to build these Cloud One and Platform One services, enterprise services, so teams can focus on building their mission software, not have to reinvent the wheel and build an entire stack from scratch.
Great. Thanks, Nicholas. So, Lauren, you touched on this a little bit earlier, leadership buy-in and communicating value. That's always going to be something that's, relevant, especially for such a huge initiative like DevSecOps at DoD. So, how has DevSecOps been communicated during these past few years, and how do you really get that value communicated across the agency?
Well, I will share that it started out as kind of, DevSecOps, that's that buzzword that is kind of run by those innovators over there that are kind of wearing hoodies and they're a little different. And, I guess as long as they stay over there, it's okay. The typical like organizational dynamic in the DoD. And I think what made it serious was the business case as it came out. And one of the most powerful early metrics was kind of looking at, okay, if we continue on the path that we're going for that in-air refueling project that I mentioned, then it's going to take us 5 years to start with the savings that we think we can get. And within that first 6 months or so, they were saving about $250,000 a week on fuel. By the end of the first year, it was starting to be closer to $500 million also in maintenance and platform costs, because they didn't have to have, the in-air gas stations, so to speak, kind of just hanging out in theater waiting for folks to come up. They could plan it very, very tightly with fewer KC-135s. And so, you start to say, well, what happens if I wait 5 years before I can start doing that savings versus today? So you start calculating your cost of delay. And when people started to see in the corporate structure how much faster we could be driving value and savings, and how much solving problems in a modern way and speeding this capability of the warfighter, it wasn't just some innovation thing happening over there. It was a real mission need that was saving very, very noticeable amounts of money and was worth the investment. And from there to, the actual airmen at the tactical edge, the operational commanders at that point, CENTCOM, was huge in the global war on terror, and kind of the number one priority strategy-wise. And so when you have combatant commanders saying, DevSecOps is critical to my mission, and you have the corporate structure saying, oh my goodness, you just showed me $500 million a year in platform costs, the rest of the story kind of writes itself.
Fantastic. And Nicholas, I know you were brought in to kind of spearhead all of these efforts, and we've seen how that has boomed over the past couple of years. So from your point of view, can you talk through some of the challenges that you had in the organization, or even some of the cultural challenges that Lauren touched upon? What were some of those things like for you?
Yeah, well, I think the main issue we're facing is the size and scale of the department, right? Both what we're trying to do is not just for the Air Force, it's DoD-wide, and obviously you have a lot of silos, and unfortunately there's a lot of egos, including mine, that we have to deal with, and that's obviously not always easy to find the right approach. And one size fits all obviously is never a good idea. So we try to build Platform One as a flexible modular capability that teams can use in different ways. And I think that was foundational to the success of the adoption of Platform One and why we're able to move so fast. But also, I think people started to realize that the only way for us to get there is by collaborating and being stronger, faster, and better together as a team because of the lack of talent already that we're facing and the difficulty of bringing additional talent inside the government. So I think we don't have a choice but to do that and work together and stop reinventing the wheel. And I think the whole other aspect to the issue of scale is that we have teams that got started early before I got here, and they were doing great work. And now, we are building enterprise services that they would benefit from, but at the same time, they don't want to slow down, right? So I always think of that visual that we see on social media where you see two people pushing a car with square wheels, and someone shows up with a round wheel and say, hey, I can replace your wheels and you can move faster. But they're like, no, we're too busy. We're pushing the car, right? So I think it's a little bit of the same analogy. Sometimes, unfortunately, people are so focused on delivery and day to day, and they have tight deadlines, and the leadership needs to take a step back and understand, yes, maybe we have to slip, for 2 months now, but we're going to save 10 years down the road. That trade-off of short-term investment in enterprise capability adoption that will pay off, tenfold down the road, but might have some short-term impact on the delivery of existing capabilities. But I think it's a matter of understanding that return on investment, right? And so I think the fact that we built Platform One and made Platform One the first ever, DevSecOps managed service approved by DoD CIO, I think that alone and working tightly with DoD CIO and ANS to ensure that we're not just building something for the Air Force and that we are welcoming everybody and we have not Navy, Army customers, Cyber Command and NSA and others using pieces of Platform One. That I think has been the prime enabler to remove some of these impediments.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Nick. And so going back to a little bit of the cultural aspect of things, Lauren, how have you seen this really working to break down silos at the DoD? You said earlier DoD is such a monolith and it can be challenging to navigate. But it seems like the DevSecOps initiative and the projects that came out of it really helped, break that down.
Yes, absolutely. And, once you have, for instance, presidential candidates in the last primary touting some of the successes from our DevSecOps teams, you're doing something right. And really, all of these programs are providing a lot of value and driving things forward. So, at this point, culturally, there's definitely a lot of kind of success and expectation there. But there's still a lot of work to do, and Nick has helped in a lot of ways with this. There's still a little bit of, I want to build my own thing. And after Kessel Run was celebrated so much, and Platform One and Space Camp were celebrated so much as these awesome innovators who built their own platform and they're developing code and they're pushing out to the warfighter. We've had teams come after that, hey, we want to be cool too. We want to do this too. And some of the folks felt like, well, but if I'm not going to be as cool if I don't build my own platform too. And so those guys had to start from scratch. They had to build their own cloud and then build their own platform and their own pipeline. And they had to, train their whole workforce from scratch. So if I really want to, earn the badge, I have to do it too. And so we're trying to help people to get a little bit away from that mentality and just be able to say, hey, my focus is on delivering capability to the warfighter. I don't want to have to build my own cloud and my own platform and my own pipeline. I don't even necessarily want to have to come up with my own training curriculum to get people up to speed. I want to use the things that are there, because if I use the things that are there, then, I can roll up to Platform One and I can have people pushing code to production in a couple of weeks. I don't need to be going through this rigmarole just to, I guess to show everyone how creative and smart I am at building my own thing. And, and now people are like, from the military, the Navy and the Marine Corps and the Army, they're kind of showing how smart they are by saying, hey, y'all, look what Baby Yoda is doing over here in the Air Force. We're just going to roll up and kind of take it, and we're going to start deploying code. And so kind of the what do we celebrate, and who's just like really nailing it. When you can come in and work smart like that, that is being celebrated much more than it did in the past. And that's a really huge cultural movement that we've had as well.
Fantastic.
And I may add a little bit to that, but because I think you're spot on there, right? I think people ideally will understand that we are here to build better experiences and warfighter capabilities, not to build platform or software factories that can then be used to do so, right? So I think hopefully people will realize that the future will be about creating work of microservices and containers that will be able to be used to do true warfighting capabilities, and not just the basic foundational layers of commodity of platforms. That is not a win for the warfighter. No one cares that we have Kubernetes running. They care that we can instantiate mission capabilities at the pace of relevance, and they care that we can be modular and flexible to try new things, bring new capabilities to life in a matter of hours without having to reinvent the wheel. I always go back to the SpaceX model that has only 200 people, developers, right, to build the 11 platforms of SpaceX, where we have 4,000 just for F-35 alone. That's because we don't share and enable sharing code across teams, and we rebuild everything as a monolithic stack from scratch. That has to stop, because we don't have the luxury of wasting time anymore. And we need to be able to have teams focus on the delta of what needs to be improved. And that's why, the platforms at SpaceX have a massive code reuse, 80+% can be reused. And the focus of the development teams is the 20% that makes them different. That we need to get at the same stage, and that's where people should really get the real good press releases and not so much building platforms anymore.
Absolutely.
I want to expand on that a little bit, because I know open source is a huge thing for the Platform One, and of sharing it across DoD and, of course, outside of DoD as well. What does that look like as far as expanding it to other agencies who might want to get a piece of pie?
I think it's for me, right?
Go for it, Nick.
All right. Well, we already have 12 agencies looking at already using a lot of the Platform One work. That's why we open sourced it, and not only agencies but also friendly countries as well. So that's exciting to see. We have DHS, VA, DOJ, DOI, IRS, and many teams looking at what we're doing, and we're using containers, we're using code on Repo One. And more importantly, we have also the Defense Industrial Base that has access to our source code to instantiate Platform One on their premises, to do hardware loop testing, to build their software following the same capability and model, and contributing back, in effect, making some of these primes and subs that used to be mostly work-for-hire services company, a product company, because they can now ship software to Iron Bank and Platform One. And so that enables the sharing and the Lego block capability of deployment of software. So I think it's pretty exciting to see. I think it's the reason also why we are more successful at scaling, is because of that openness to the world, so people can see the code, see what we're doing, and contribute back, and have a two-way street between these teams and us.
And I'm pretty excited to see the Navy Black Pearl team come into Platform One, because they're doing some really great work. And I also love that, we started out with space names, Kessel Run, Space Camp. They're going nautical with Pirates of the Caribbean. You got the Black Pearl in there. So everyone's keeping on brand.
Everyone wants to work out of a Millennium Falcon, Lauren. So I am going to pull just an audience question really quick. This one is short and sweet. They asked, how is the UX standardized or screened for effectiveness? Maybe that's a Nicholas question.
I can take that if you want. I don't think it is, unfortunately, yet. But we have a great, I mean, Lauren has a great chief UX officer who has been leading a lot of the work in UX, and user experience and design has been a focus of Colt. That is our chief UX officer, which is, interesting. We have all these new first chiefs, chief UX officer. We have a chief modeling and simulation officer at the Air Force that just started, a great chief architect with Preston Dunlap as well. So we have a lot of great people focused on improving a lot of these gaps. I think Colt is working this on the UI UX standpoint, but we also have to be careful, right? It's easy maybe to centralize design when it comes to business systems. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult when it comes to the weapons. And quite honestly, while I love business systems, the real mission stuff that we do is on the weapon side. So it makes it a little bit harder, right? So I don't want to oversell the ability to do that, but I don't think it's an easy thing to achieve because of the different kind of systems. And, if you compare a space system or a jet and a bomber and, some type of missile, obviously that's a very different kind of UI.
Yeah, I'll add that we do have a pretty robust and gaining more robustness community of practice around design and UX UI in general, led by Colt Woodall. And with regard to individual products, we're asking users pretty regularly about the usability. They are working hand in hand with, with the designers and developers that are producing the products that they're using, and we're starting to instrument more of our systems as well to track the performance side of things, so that in addition to being intuitive and working for the mission, we want it to also be fast and to work at the speed of the mission. So a number of things ongoing there.
Great. And this is another audience question. I might throw that to Lauren, since I know you were heavily involved in the continuous ATO with all of this. Is there somewhere we can see the Air Force's process for continuous ATOs so we can adopt a similar process?
Sure. So we do have some playbooks documented from the early days of continuous ATO. I will say that, Nick and his team have done some incredible work to make it even easier. So in the Air Force, it could be as simple as use Platform One, go through their onboarding, and, pretty much do a little bit of an enablement check at the end, and, you can push code and use the continuous ATO. In the earlier days, and for folks that aren't using Platform One, you have to get all of your stuff accredited. Your platform, your CI/CD pipeline, all of your environments that you're working in, checking your endpoints, your Wi-Fi, all the traditional security stuff. But then on top of that, you're auditing the team to make sure that they have established processes, they know how to use them, that people can't circumvent the pipeline to just push code because they felt like it. That you have regular testing. Sometimes it's pen testing, sometimes it's chaos engineers who are taking a look at some of the applications and giving real-time feedback on the other end for how the developers can do better, and also having peer reviews. That's been another thing, is that if you want to have a continuous ATO, you're joining a community of developers, and you have to contribute to that community by being reviewed and also reviewing others and contributing. So, and Nick just posted in the chat window where the latest Cato documentation is. Nick, do you want to expand on that as well?
Yeah, sure. Quickly, we've been working, piggybacking on the work that Lauren and Casaron has done for what, 3 years, 2 years? I don't know, 3 years. And took it to DoD, CIO, and DISA and Cyber Command, and created this new guidance that's coming out now. Literally 2 weeks ago, we briefed it to the DoD, and we're getting a lot of great feedback. So if people want to check it out, it's on the software that they have, that mail website. If you go under DSOP/documents, you're going to find the CATO video where we have the brief and the slide deck that explain the step-by-step guide. So with the process, how we assess gates, we set the platform and the cyber runtime necessary to make sure that we have zero trust and behavioral detection, and how we make sure that the gates are met with thresholds that the authorizing official can approve. And then, like Lauren said, the team has to go through that onboarding training to make sure they understand the trust that's given to them to some degree. And then you have a continuous ATO. So we have that great briefing on the website.
Awesome. Well, we are out of time, but thank you so much, Lauren and Nicholas, for diving into a little bit more about the DevSecOps initiative at the Air Force. It's really fascinating work, and I've personally been following it. Of course, our writers have also been following it. And Nicholas, welcome back. It's great to have you for our event again. So
thanks so much.
I will pass it.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. I will pass it off now to the next panel, which is moderated by my colleague, Mark Ranema. That will be on infrastructure as code. So Mark, off to you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Very excited to have this panel, Infrastructure as a Code. Good morning, everybody. We have a number of esteemed panelists here and looking forward to the discussion over the next 30 or 40 minutes. We're joined today by Rob Brown, the CTO of USCIS, Ty Schneider, who's a systems engineer for the technology and platform systems portfolio within the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Colonel Charles DeStefani of the Deputy Chief Data Officer for U.S. Air Force. And thank you, Amy, for setting the stage so well with Nicholas and Karen. Excited to get started here. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. We heard a little bit about some of the Air Force's efforts within DevSecOps. And so, Rob, I wanted to go over to you and hear a little bit about USCIS's adoption of DevSecOps and some successes or challenges that you could share with us.
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Mark. Fellow panelists, we've actually had a luxury of being sort of a fee-funded out of a lot of congressional appropriation kind of challenges, which has provided us a very wonderful luxury of being able to probably move a little bit faster than other folks and some of our other DHS brethren. So some of those opportunities have been to do a lot of experimentation, as well as do a lot of movement into the cloud pretty early and often. And we actually started this journey back in 18 or probably 16, I guess, and really started moving 18. Our current state from all applications in the actual cloud is close to 85, probably almost 90% of all USCIS applications. Pretty much cloud. I wouldn't say they're cloud native, but refactoring towards that goal. From a DevSecOps perspective, I mean, the reason I bring cloud up is that was the enabler. That's the keystone to get moving. When we started, really, we opened up the aperture for a lot of our dev teams and infrastructure engineers to really be. I don't want to use the term rogue loosely, but it's sort of rogue, and the ability for them to learn effectively, understand what the cloud had to offer, and then we started to layer in a pretty structured approach, and even more so as of late, a lot of standards and starting to apply governance, and then understanding again truly from a DevSecOps perspective, the platforms we could start to leverage across multiple development teams, either CI/CD Jenkins, for example, to just version control. GitHub, for example, and we started to fill some of those gaps across the board, and to a point now where from an IDE where we've baked a lot of, again, the security, a lot of the sort of sanity and linting that can happen in the IDE, all the way to the deployment endpoints. At this stage, a lot of our applications are not monolithic. They really are based on sort of domains and microservices leveraging eventing, meaning that we actually have most of these apps in Kubernetes. We've really taken on the role and the sort of the outcome and pushing our dev teams to empower themselves as well as everybody else, a true GitOps type of that to me is sort of our next evolution. We've had some successes here as of late, and we continue to see more and more teams start to take on that that sort of pipeline approach, that common set of tools, all of which they can contribute to. Some of which, from a security perspective, it's again feedback, API driven, that they can really be either autonomous or semi-autonomous in how they move forward. And working with a security group, essentially, we're almost complete with this, I would say, mapping out so that it's not just applications, it truly is full IDE all the way to that deployment endpoint, a really continuous authorization for all teams to take advantage of. Meaning that the amount of controls they would have is in, maybe 20 to 50 as opposed to the 200 plus. So that there's lots of battle scars in that journey. And hopefully we can talk a little bit more about what that actually means and how other folks can learn from those scars.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. That's definitely very impressive. 90% of the applications already moved into leveraging the methodology. Ty, I know that the VA's pretty aggressively shifted over to a DevSecOps mentality over the last 2 years. Can you talk a little bit about what support you got from leadership and senior executives and how that's played a role?
Yes, thanks for having Mark and the whole group for setting this all up. So the support we've gotten from the leaders has been really, really quite great. The VA traditionally, has had a different mindset on this, and so in moving to this new way of thinking and moving forward with infrastructure as code, and we've gotten a lot of support from all the way up to the executive level, to the director level, to the supervisor, and they really empowered us to move forward and help knock down barriers for us and drive. It really just opened up to the different areas of BA that haven't really been exposed to this so much. So they've really helped us be able to move this more quickly than I think traditionally would have at VA, just because there's red tape barriers we have to deal with sometimes, and there's always going to be concerns of funding and things of that nature that really, to my surprise and appreciation, they really helped pave that way for us to promote this. And so I've really enjoyed the support of the executive and directors.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ty. I appreciate that. So we'll shift over to you, Colonel DeStefani. So from a data perspective, we heard from Nicholas earlier, we heard from Karen. Obviously, Air Forces had a tremendous success leading the way within DoD from a DevSecOps perspective. Can you speak to us a little bit about the data considerations and your role in what was shared earlier?
Sure. We've been working closely with Ms. Knausenberger and Mr. Shalane. It's been a wonderful journey. Mr. Shalane started his journey at DISA at the DoD level back in 2015, 2016. So it's been a road we've been on for about 4 years. And from an innovation perspective, when Ms. Knausenberger was the Director of Transformation and Innovation for the Air Force before her current position as the Deputy CIO, she was our approving official to help us move with data to get to artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities in the cloud as quickly as possible. So we started back in 2018 with an agile mentality, using all of the common tools that we're used to hearing about with Ansible and Jenkins and Artifactory, those types of capabilities, but focused on the data science and data analytics customer more than anything else. So one of the biggest things that makes the Chief Data Office delivery of capability unique from the other software factories like Kessel Run or Space Camp or Kobayashi Maru is the fact that we don't write any of the tools that we deploy. We're deploying other analytics products like Databricks or Tableau or Click, or the different tools that people use, Trifacta for curation, visualization. We started with a data science reference architecture that laid out all of the capabilities in a microservices format that would be needed to do data science and do artificial intelligence projects. And then our efforts in the cloud have been to simply make available to the Department of Defense those tools which industry takes for granted, and combine those with DoD data sets, which is where the security approval and the authority to operate comes in, and then enabling that for a wide variety of mission sets for space and personnel and logistics and maintenance and transportation. So we are able to put new capabilities out into the cloud within 30 to 45 days, where they used to take 10 months to a year.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I mean, we all know we're doing this on a day-to-day basis. That really DevSecOps, it's a large coordination effort, managing large teams and coordinating across large teams. Rob, I wanted to go back to you. If you could talk to us a little bit about maybe some challenges you guys faced as you were making the progress that you did, as far as managing large teams and coordination across development teams and security teams, and kind of how you dealt with that.
Sure, absolutely. So starting off in the cloud, again, sort of opening that aperture, letting folks learn, understand, skill up. I would say, and still one of the largest challenges across the board, from just basic infrastructure engineering to even just data science and understanding the tool sets that obfuscate the need for data scientists, is really the skills, the training, and ensuring folks are continuously improving in those various disciplines. It's ongoing, and I can't stress enough that is probably the number one challenge. Outside of that, moving and managing teams, outside of charisma, it's sometimes it's the shiny object, and you can lead folks with the new shiny object you can use, which has been very successful. We've done that with various technologies and sort of doing some changes, Kubernetes being one, just sort of real-time event streaming, and underlying technology like Kafka has been another. Part of it is to help manage those teams and moving into those directions. Again, with that sort of carrot, is also at the same time applying, again, some of those standards, and applying certain level of governance, yet still enabling those teams to have control. Just like self-organizing teams, we want those folks to have the ability to self-organize their pipelines to some degree. And so that to me is also very, very important, and has illustrated to be successful in moving forward with organizing large teams so they're not rolling themselves and adopting those new platforms and that technology and gluing it together for them. The other great success that we've had, and large lesson, is when we first stood up Kubernetes, whatever it was, like 4 or 5 years ago, we actually had security write our CloudFormation templates for us. And really the approach was setting up a war room where we worked for about a couple of weeks, and then ultimately a full month to actually get our first workload into production on that Kubernetes cluster, was to ensure that we had the right security engineers in the room, and that they were also part of not only just building up that cluster, but also part of that pipeline in delivering those pods to production. That was exceedingly important. And then having that relationship as you start to build out your full pipeline with security is paramount. And ensuring that they have the right skill sets as well, and understand the need for those teams to be able to leverage security tool APIs and receive that feedback. That has also been, again, extremely important in moving forward with moving large teams. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just need to have a mandate. For us, we've managed that through management instructions, just really a policy. And when we first started this initiative, I think back in the day, was really started with GitHub and getting everybody aggregated into one version control system. We had, you name it, we had 6 to 7 to 0 different types of version control. The worst was probably Sneaker Mill passing, actual CDs to the quality folks. But part of it was really just setting a mandate or a goal, like thou shalt, by this date. And having the right sort of engineers, automation engineers, be able to work with some of those teams to really either educate them and or provide automation scripts, pathways for them to move off of their old systems and into a new, and then show them the value and the benefit. Part of that as well in adopting some of the new platforms is ensuring that you've got a good swath of technical folks that you're delivering this to, and ensuring you're getting that upfront feedback in the form of POCs. And probably one of the last areas I think that's very important is treat DevSecOps like you would anything else and put UX, that experience, at the forefront. That's very, very important.
Excellent. That was very valuable, Rob. Thank you. That's some great nuggets of lessons learned there that I'm sure other agencies and commercial and others can leverage. You mentioned the mandate from above. I mean, that's obviously so critical. Personally, I feel like one of the reasons that Air Force has had so much success is they're structured that way for those mandates to come down and people need to follow it. Ty, I know you're in the VA, and it's a very, very large agency. A lot of different product lines, 3 separate organizations, one handling health, one benefits, and the other memorials. Talk to us a little bit about your journey there, and more specifically, how could the partners within industry and business help shepherd kind of VA through this process of full DevSecOps adoption?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So yeah, you're right. The VA is a very big place. We've been trying to support Secretary Wilkie's customer service improvement priority through IT modernization at the VA. And so we really want to provide the best customer service possible to the veterans. But to give you a little bit of scope, the VA, it's equivalent to a Fortune 10 company. We have 400,000 federal employees. We support over 19 million veterans, and then we have over 1,200 healthcare facilities we support as well, along with 140 veteran cemeteries. And so it's a very large place, and so. I'm sorry. So I lost frame on the question. I apologize. You're on mute.
Sorry, I meant navigating through the size and the complexity of large teams and competing priorities.
Oh, that's right. So with the vendor support and such, so vendors are critical to us. Getting through just any day at VA. And so we have a reliance on vendors and business partners. The vendors themselves, I don't deal with them directly, but as far as the interaction with the VA, but we do have offices that handle that. And so I don't stray too much into that side of things. But as far as challenges at VA, and getting this sort of mindset going, there's like I referenced before, there's a lot of older type of thinking with waterfall and such, and that tends to slow things down, drive it's a little bit inefficient, costs more, it puts security kind of on the back burner. And moving into this newer way of thinking with Agile, you're going to get a much more cohesive result. It's going to drive teams together rather than apart. It's going to create, an efficiency throughout the projects and really put security at the forefront. So I kind of think of it like a house. When you have like older style houses, you have all this separation. You have all these walls with every single room and element of the house that you have to go through just to get to one place. And with the Agile methodology, you really are more of a open concept type of house. So you're going to have your security, your administration, your development teams all working together. And what happens is you start to see results in the beginning. So you're not waiting on a block of time to see results. You don't have to wait for this big development push to get something into an environment, and then maybe you see results, and then maybe you scan it at a certain point. It's from the beginning, the development and the administration and security are all together, and so you see feedback immediately from that first push from development. You get feedback as to your infrastructure, you get feedback as to into security of the application and how you need to proceed going forward. And that also provides feedback to the business as well, so they can get a pulse of where you're at, how things are going. And so just facilitating that mindset really to the different business partners and vendors that we work with day to day, getting them to see that moving away from that older approach is really the way to go, is, I would say, one of the bigger challenges we face at VA, because it's really a section by section movement. It's not that we can just do it in one broad swath approach, because there's a lot of different pockets at VA that we have to go into and discuss with. So it really is something that we keep having to reiterate on and show the benefits of that to them to get them to move forward and taking on the challenges of modernizing an application, because it really, modernization, it's a journey. It is not, it's not just like, oh, let's just do this. And so it really is something you have to think about and put a lot of effort into to get where you want to be. Containerization, it really, it has a lot of benefits, provides a lot of scale, but sometimes that application is pretty far from getting to that point. And so you've got to make a certain level of commitment, and part of that mindset and culture shift is getting them to commit to that modernization effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's obviously a very large organizational change management effort, and really culture change is key to all of this, for sure. Let's shift over to you, Colonel DeStefani. So DoD recently released a defense data strategy guidance, and obviously that's a very large coordination effort. I wonder if you can just kind of speak to the collaborative approach and how that impacts what's going on in the Air Force regarding DevSecOps.
Well, the release of the DoD data strategy for us was a great relief. It has actually been a work in progress now for over a year. And the 7 goals around data in the data strategy, with visible, accessible, understandable, linked, and trustworthy, interoperable, and secure, those were contributed by the Air Force. In fact, our data platform is branded as Vault to represent those concepts as having secure, interoperable, accessible, visible, and linked, trusted data. So we are glad to see that effort moving forward at a policy level across the department. Mr. Dave Spirk, the Department of Defense Chief Data Officer, has been in the seat for about 6 months and has already made great strides across the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, with the collaboration and the different working groups focused on talent and culture and interoperability. So it's been a great collaborative effort that is also supportive of work that the Air Force is doing specifically around the Advanced Battle Management System. That ties into the Department of Defense's focus on Joint All-Domain Command and Control. So they're very much, the policy is now catching up to the innovative space and the work that people are trying to do to really give us the capabilities we need to compete at a global scale. Our competitors around the world aren't waiting for us. They're moving out, and it's on us to innovate faster, keep up, and then maintain that position of leadership in a globally competitive environment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So let's stay on the topic of organizational change management. Rob, can you share, early on, it sounds like you guys obviously have been on this trajectory for a while now. Early on, are there any tips that you have to share just from an organizational change management perspective? As I mentioned before, I think the Air Force and DoD definitely benefits from that command and control from above, whereas other agencies might have different leaders with different priorities, and it might be a little bit more of a challenge. So I wonder if there's any tips that you have to share that you experienced early on in your experience.
Absolutely. Probably with most organizations, military included, a lot of it is just money driven, and that money typically drives silos, and those silos drive, redundancy and just building the same stuff, or at least what I've discovered here is we were building 30 to sometimes maybe even 80% of the same stuff across different stovepipes within the organization. And just looking back, it was all really driven by money, where the money was coming from to a director, and the director would then work with a specific facet or a portfolio team. And then the synergy or the discussions across was either lukewarm to straight up competitive. So, in those sorts of environments, the organizational change is very important, especially when, if you need to be reporting on what you're spending, and just start to drive efficiencies, especially from a DevSecOps perspective and just a cultural perspective. I'd rather not go all the way up a chain and, across and down. Leveraging tools like Slack and such provide the capability to just go straight horizontal. That was a good tip at the beginning to start to break some of those working level communication challenges, and start to break away from that Conway's law of, we keep building all these stovepipes based upon the communication patterns that exist. So highly recommend that working level collaboration and taking on the approach of, leading from the rear, or those sort of mentalities or constructs where, if you can and you can afford it and it works within your organization, lead from the back of the room, and provide more mentorship and coaching as opposed to that command and control. And enable your teams to be more, again, self-organizing based upon something, though. And sometimes that something is you need to show these folks what truly the mission is and what you're doing, how what you're building is operationally affects people, and for good or bad. Sometimes you need to really dive into some of those incident reports across multiple teams, so that they can actually see what is happening with the mission, what's happening with the business, how it affects people. I think those are other very key elements to make it real. A lot of times, in IT, we sometimes are, the guys in the basement with tinfoil hats on, turning screws, and we neglect to see what's actually happening. So it's our having that mentality, it's our responsibility. This is part of the coaching of the teams and the organization to ensure that we understand what we're building, and we understand ideally almost as good as the individuals, the product owners, the SMEs, and not relying 100% on them. Take the initiative to learn yourself. That has also provided some great organizational challenges. Challenges being abated is just sort of pushing that sort of mentality to a lot of our development teams and other engineers. Another sort of technique that we've used to manage some of the organizational change, not only internally within OIT, but also across all of CIS, and abate that sort of stovepipe structure is to, again, use this reverse Conway's law, and using architectural constructs that are based upon business functions as opposed to being driven by money, where we can aggregate on those business functional domains, build to those domains, align the right people and groups and portfolios to those domains, and then transcend digital products across those different service domains or service areas. That's also something we've been experimenting with and have had some success over the past few years. If you think about, again, taking the architecture, how we actually start to deliver things, having that product first approach, not a program or really necessarily a portfolio, and really thinking about delivery of digital products, that, again, transcends these domains has been successful to a point, again, where we're starting to see shifts in how the business is starting to align themselves across different similar adjudicative directorates and thinking in the same line, which I think is very telling. And again, from our perspective, makes our life easier. You know, we've got all of these different groups. We're trying to sort of play catch with them all, different business groups. We sometimes become marriage counselors between different business directorates, and that's not our job. So another area that has been very helpful in organizing at least the OIT change and sort of trying to draw this back to infrastructure and infrastructure as code is, again, reducing that cognitive load on the development team and ensuring that we leverage those sort of PaaS tool sets, platforms, or having the right group that can manage those PaaS tool sets. Again, ideally in an autonomous way for those folks using it, but minimizing the total number of DevSecOps, DevOps, whatever you want to call them, teams, so that they have the trust and confidence in those platforms to deliver that service. That's also been a very large shift. And thinking also about delivery teams, and it is a team, right? It's a team that may, and I'm sort of ripping this off from Skeleton and team topologies, but you know, having that group that works on the hard stuff, and maybe it's the integration stuff, another group that's just cranking out code that's just, you're literally trying to deliver what the businesses ask them to deliver. And then having that facilitation team that can work with the business, work with the other domains, and start to harmonize across that digital product delivery flow.
Excellent. And thank you for bringing it back to infrastructure. You know, we got so caught up. We've covered a lot of different areas on DevSecOps. You know, we've talked about security a little bit, organizational change management and coordination, but the infrastructure piece. So Ty, I know within the VA there is just a wide variety of systems that are hosted on different platforms. I know you have everything from there's a VA enterprise cloud now that's running off Azure and AWS. But I know there's plenty of systems that are still hosted on-prem and even some mainframe that still exists within VA. Can you just talk about that kind of wide range of infrastructure and kind of what challenges that brings to, you know, wider DevSecOps adoption across the agency?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Mark. So yeah, you're right. We have applications sitting on all different variety of platforms, from VMs to mainframes to older physical servers to you name it, it's there. We have cloud as well, but so we've been looking into a platform as a service type of setup so that we can bring in those type of applications in a modernized fashion. So, getting people to modernize and move towards containerization and towards microservices and things, it'll allow us to bring them on to a common platform, and that will increase our ability to serve them so much better. So, I mean, when you talk about platform as a service, it really will enable you to make use of scale. With VA, there's oftentimes spikes in demand. You want to be able to meet those demands. So it really, with containerization, you can quickly scale up, scale down based on what's going on in real time and do it very quickly. We've been looking at the Kubernetes-based platforms, and with Kubernetes, it really seems to be the industry leader in container orchestration, and so its ability to scale up, scale down, and manage workload in a declarative fashion really is something that's appealing to us. And so we've been focused on, anything we're looking at needs to have that. And then we also are focused on enterprise support. So throughout our journey, we've dealt with different pockets of the VA of innovation. And one thing we've learned is that it's if you have the enterprise support backing, you're going to have a much more comprehensive and effective solution rather than maybe an open source method where you cobble together, various things that work together, and it provides provides a solution, but it's really not meant to scale enterprise-wide. We are really wanting to provide that enterprise level of scaling. And so when we look at these platforms of service, or platforms as a service, we're wanting to have platforms that will not only operate on-prem, but also operate in the major cloud spaces. And we're wanting to have a single point of control for deploying across those spaces. So if someone works better on-prem, great, we can accommodate that. They work better in AWS or Google or Azure, any of those major spaces, we can accommodate all those things. So we aren't focused on one particular vendor. We are just focused on being able to provide the major service. Another thing that we're looking to do is, help support continuous ATO within those applications. So a lot of times you have all these singular ATOs for all these different applications. Well, when you move in platform as a service, you get a lot of commonality on the infrastructure. And so that takes away a lot of the need for a lot of the documentation on the back end to maintain those ATOs. And so we're really looking to help provide that and help them to, not as near as much paperwork and admin work behind the scenes to support them. And then, you also gain things like immutable infrastructure. With traditional ways of doing things with servers and such, your infrastructure, it can be modified at any time. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's been in IT has dealt with, what changed that caused that outage, and so that happens, and we want to go away from that. We want to provide something that is really durable, that cannot be easily modified to affect production. So when you deal with immutable infrastructure and where it can't be changed unless it's redeployed, you really provide a level of stability that it's hard to match in any other platform. And so we really have focused on that as well. And so that's really been where we've been looking at the VA with platform as a service.
Great. Thank you, Ty. Colonel, I wonder, I know that in the Air Force, the majority of the systems DoD hosted in DISA for the most part. Can you talk a little bit about that coordination effort and getting DISA and other organizations within DoD to kind of move at the pace of the Air Force to synchronize and be able to really move the DevSecOps initiatives forward?
Well, that's actually an excellent question, because I'm a reservist on active duty orders right now with the Chief Data Office and have been for a couple of years. But my assignment in the reserves is actually the assistant director for DISA's Emerging Technology Division. So I work with Steve Wallace and by definition have a foot in both camps and try to make sure that what I bring forward as a technology solution representing the Air Force Chief Data Office is in alignment with the work Nick Shalane did with DevSecOps at DoD before he came to the Air Force. So the personal relationships that we have been very helpful in making sure that those connections are there for implementing things like zero trust technologies or commercial solutions for classified workstations. So making those connections, and also the working groups that we have. The one we participate in specifically, I mentioned before, is the Department of Defense Chief Data Office Council. So we can coordinate with our Army and Navy brethren on a very informal basis. We don't have to wait for the monthly meeting to have a conversation. If there's something that they're doing or we hear about that's associated with JADC2, we can pick up the phone or get on a video call and say, how does this Army Futures Command effort affect what the Air Force is doing in the advanced battle management architecture? And the ability to have those conversations and have those open doors, if you will, at the executive level and at the senior technical working level has been very beneficial, I think, to really keep us on the same page as we try to unify the efforts across the Department of Defense, especially as it comes to implementing DevSecOps to increase velocity and lower risk around the delivery of data services.
Wow, that's amazing. How valuable to have you be able to represent both camps, and that's obviously the Air Force is benefiting from that. So that's great. This has been a really great discussion. I've certainly learned a lot myself from a lessons learned perspective. Thank you, Rob Brown. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Colonel. This has been a very informative discussion, and we appreciate your time talking to us today about DevSecOps. We, of course, wish you all the success and continual getting adoption and buy-in within your agencies, and like to see this obviously spread across the federal government and benefit the veterans, benefit the government and the taxpayer ultimately at the end. And so that is going to conclude our panel on infrastructure as a code. So thank you for your time this morning. Next, we are going to shift over to Andrew Underhill, who's the Chief Technology Officer for Government CIO, and he's going to lead a discussion on artificial intelligence for IT operations and data analytics.
So, thank you, Mark, for that discussion. It's great to have you on the team. Thanks for the transition. So, as Mark said, we're going to be talking about AI ops and data analytics. How artificial intelligence for IT operations and advanced data analytics can make agencies more proactive rather than being reactive throughout their product life cycles. We're going to talk about technologies like RPA, robotic process automation, and AI, and how they're helping them shift away from manual process towards IT infrastructure improvements over time. You know, I'm looking forward to the time when AI ops is the overarching theme to these sessions, not DevSecOps. You know, I think it will occur at some point, and DevSecOps is the sibling to AI ops, right? So I'm joined on this session with Colonel Bradshaw. He's Deputy Director and AI Task Force at the AI Task Force at Army Futures Command. Good morning, Colonel Bradshaw. Dave Catanoso, who's Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Good morning. Ron Thompson, who's the Chief Data Officer and Deputy Director for Digital Transformation at NASA. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning.
Matt Walker, who's Federal Sales Director at Dell Technologies. Good morning, Matt.
Wow.
So let's get started with the questions. I have a generic question for all of us to start with. You know, how are you aligning IT goals with AI, data analytics, and DevSecOps tools? And what sort of workforce cultural shifts are you seeing or encouraging to streamline use of these tools? Maybe we should start with Ron. Your microphone's on.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. So this is a pretty good story for NASA. You know, really, it's our part of our digital transformation, and we've been active in that activity for the last two years, where we've done a lot of research and methodologies in our approach. And culture and workforce and AI ML are two of our key thrust areas that we're working on. So it's really the focal point that we have right now is really identifying pockets of excellence within the organization. NASA is a very federated organization, like many. We have very disparate missions. You know, we have aeronautical mission, we have science and research, and we have human exploration. So there are our three pillars, and we have pockets of really, I would say, world-class expertise in these. So what we're doing as part of our transformation is gaining awareness of where those pockets of excellence are, and encouraging sharing and making sure we do this in a very secure fashion. Making sure we're sharing knowledge, you know, not only throughout the organization, but from best practices outside in other government agencies and commercially as well. So the culture is really that awareness that's starting with, starting with data, the need for actually sharing our expertise among the different parts of the organization. So that awareness is really important. And then our skills as well. So the skills of our workforce, we're assessing where we have really strong bench strength and where we have opportunities where we need to shore that up holistically across the organization. So that's where we are, Andrew, at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Ron. Colonel Bradshaw, from your perspective, how are you seeing the goals and workforce shifts supporting those goals?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I'm going to piggyback off Ron and say the military, DoD, and the Army, again, very federated, spread globally. What we've seen is, as senior leaders start to adopt this technology, there's a vast space between users on the ground and actual decision makers at the top who are, in some cases, making multi-million-dollar decisions on technology that will be used by the users at the lower end. So what we're trying to do inside the Army specifically is close that gap between users on the ground who understand the technology, probably a kid who is 18, 19, 20 years old, who's grown up with a screen in front of his face his entire life, and 50, 60-year-old general officers and senior executives who aren't necessarily in tune with the latest and greatest technology, but know that we need to move that direction. So we're taking some looks at educational advances and educational opportunities to close that gap between those two user bases.
And thank you. So David Catanoso, I notice your microphone's still off, but I wanted to ask you a question about your role with the VA Enterprise Cloud and DevSecOps. How are you aligning with IT goals, AI and data analytics, and the DevSecOps, I can't get that word out, DevSecOps tools within the VA Enterprise Cloud?
Well, one of our main IT goals from Secretary Wilkie is to improve customer service to our veterans, and we've oriented our digital service strategy really to deliver that. And for those that don't know, the VA is the second largest federal agency. We've got over 400,000 employees. If we were a Fortune 500 business, we'd be a Fortune 10 size organization. We've got three major lines of business: healthcare, benefits, and cemetery operations. We operate the largest integrated healthcare system in the country, maybe the world, with over 170 hospitals and 1,300 clinics. We've got over 50 benefits offices nationwide and almost 150 cemeteries. So you can imagine we've got a large corporate infrastructure to support all that and tons of IT to orient, right? So DevSecOps and AI ops are things we're looking at to really deliver on that goal of best customer service we can provide our nation's veterans.
And are you seeing any workforce cultural shifts in support of that?
Of course, we have had to adopt to cloud, to DevSecOps, going from waterfall methodologies to Agile, shifting from on-prem technology to cloud technology, software as a service, a whole bunch of things happening all at once to deliver that digital strategy. So it is a challenge. Change is challenging.
Can you point out any specific challenges that you've faced in the workforce, in the development of that space?
I think it's just getting people up to the skill level that they need to do. I mean, and everybody oriented in the same direction. With a large organization, it can be challenging sometimes. So getting training on board, making it available to everyone, making sure people can find the time to do it, right? I mean, delivering on that mission is a full-time job, maybe more than a full-time job. And then add the COVID situation in over the last 6 months or so. And it's been challenging to find the time to get people training and to also, do the work they have to do day to day.
Ron and Colonel Bradshaw, are you finding the same challenges?
So, go ahead, Ron.
Sorry, David. I would say there are a lot of commonality within organizational challenges across any organization. I don't think that's unique. Commercially or in the federal space. But I think I like to say, Andrew, look at this not as a challenge, but as an opportunity. I think the opportunity is the case for change, the case to do something differently. And that's the why, the motivation of why you're doing that. That awareness is not just simply a communication strategy, but it's getting people behind why they must think differently, why they must operate and use DevSecOps, right? Why they have to have three parts of the organization. It used to be distinct and separate, and why they must come together. Why must we use new methodologies and abilities like RPA and AI/ML? If you look at really what's in the the root of all this, it is an algorithm that tells the AI what to do. That algorithm's coded by human beings. So we have to make sure we look at this as a new tool in the toolbox, a new way of working, and then why is it needed right now in this workforce? The pandemic has forced us to work differently. I think that is true globally. Not just a particular federal organization, a particular company, a particular country, but globally we must work differently, and we must use modern ways of working differently. So that motivation we're finding is really just as important as the technology that we use and the tools and capabilities we use. That is key, that we must operate in a different manner than we have in the past.
Thank you. And Colonel Bradshaw, you finding the same issues? I know that we talked earlier a little bit about Carnegie Mellon, and with the skills shortage out there, AI engineers, DevSecOps, space is very competitive, the environment. I was just wondering what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so from the Army's perspective, I'm an operations research systems analyst. So most of us have a data or mathematical background. So I think as we saw the Army shift towards artificial intelligence and data analytics, the ORSAs in the Army were a natural fit to fill that gap. But being a small branch, we understand that we can't fill that entire gap. So now what we're trying to do is build that groundswell of people who are comfortable with the technology, who understand the technology, and can start to look inside their own organizations at where they can apply AI and ML and RPA to make life easier, right? So we want the computers to do the mundane things that we don't want people to do, or the things that computers are good at. Classification is one, right? So it's really looking across the branches in the Army. And that's another issue we have, is every officer or enlisted member comes in the Army is assigned a branch, a specific job or skill set that they have. So now we're trying to layer on top of that the AI and the ML capabilities that we want them to bring out into the workforce. So what we've done is we've gone out and grabbed some of the best and brightest in the Army, brought them to Carnegie Mellon. Some are in master's programs, some are in certification programs, and we're starting to build a PhD program too. So we see multiple levels and multiple avenues of approach. But the intent is really for us to build ambassadors that we can send out to the rest of the Army to help build that understanding and underpinning for later on. It's easy to talk about AI and ML, and you see magic arrows on charts, how data flows between different aspects. And what I always tell people is, hey, look at the magic arrows, because that's where all the business really happens, is moving that data, understanding how we leverage that data. And what we're trying to do is teach people it's not as easy as just sprinkling AI on every problem. You've really got to understand where the data comes from, the provenance of the data, and then how you can make that data usable for actual AI and ML.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's an interesting problem. I'm glad to see you looking outside of the federal space and engaging, academia. And one of the things we do at Government CIO is try and bring in those different perspectives to the federal space. I think that's why I got employed. I've got that European thing going on. I did some of the things that federal agencies over here had done in Europe before and vice versa. It's good to exchange ideas. And I wanted to bring in Matt now. Matt's got the industry perspective, which I think is always really important to find out what's going on and out in the private sector and what those organizations are doing to help infuse those ideas into the federal space. So Matt, what are you guys doing over at Dell to support these initiatives?
Yeah, thanks. We're doing a lot when it comes to AI and ML. It's a top initiative for Dell. We put a lot of investment, a lot of time, research, and development into it. We've got AI labs and proof of concepts across industries, and we've developed infrastructure and software stacks that'll allow our users to quickly deploy and kind of decrease that upfront stand-up time for these types of solutions. We have AI-ready solutions, but when you look at Dell and what we're doing internally and how we're using AI to help you're talking about cultural change and kind of how things internally are shifting. One of the great use cases we've implemented here at the company is it's a phone home tech support capability, primarily more on our consumer grade side, but it's empowering the use of AI to identify hard drive failures prior to failure. So notifying a tech support agent to dispatch a tech support on site if needed, a hard drive preemptively before that drive fails. And so we're doing this in thousands of cases where historically this would require a phone call in, the potential loss of data for our customer, and now you're taking a 10-step process down to less than 5. It's a customer satisfaction issue that we're solving there, and we're preemptively using AI to identify these issues ahead of time. So that's just one example internally that we're using, but it's a driving force for us. We're doing a lot of use cases, as I said, with industry around AI and ML, and we see it as one of our top priorities.
Mm-hmm. What are the I guess the challenges that you're seeing with introducing AI in those environments?
Challenges? I think it's it's identifying the proper use cases. I think Colonel Bradshaw mentioned it, right? We've got an influx of data these days, and enterprise data, mission data, and trying to identify how to best rationalize that and then apply AI to it. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so it's let's strategically look at this and let's see what the mission problem is that we're trying to solve, and then let's come up with a solution that's going to address that. I think it's easy to throw around the term a lot, kind of like virtualization was previously, and then cloud, now AI, ML. We got to make sure we're strategically looking at the problem we're trying to solve and then applying it properly.
Mm-hmm. Is there one success story that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some things that we're working on currently with DHS, for example, around trying to extract and analyze visualizing data from some past performance government system information, and then automatic screening systems for weapons is another thing we're doing around DHS. And you look at today what we're in with a lot of us working from home. You've got agencies like the TSA that are working in office all day, right, at the airports, and so using and us trying to work with them on implementing AI and ML solutions to help quickly and accurately screen passenger bags. Some of those types of things are areas in the civilian space that are working well with us in the federal government.
Yeah. No, I think that we've touched on one of the big problems, like the amount of data that's out there and being streamed at devices, at humans today. We really need AI to remove the noise, identify the meaningful outliers that are in there, and and take actionable actions based on those, automatically, and maybe infusing those into established workflows is the way to become more productive in somewhere like the TSA environment. Ron, a question for you, moving back to DevSecOps a little bit. But, I know that you worked at the VA prior to moving over to NASA. I was interested in, what did you learn from that role? What takeaways did you take over to NASA in your new role?
Well, at the VA, I was Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for IT, so essentially the Deputy CIO of the agency. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago now. And we had the concept of setting up that DevSecOps. So that was under Bill James was there at the time. We brought him to do that. And we saw the opportunity to be more streamlined in how that work was done. Before, it was in separate stovepipes, operations and development and security was in separate parts of the OIT. So coming up with that design and it's really nice. I'm still, obviously talking to folks that are still in the VA, still seeing how that's matured and advanced to where it is right now. I think, at the time it was very new. The concept was very new of bringing the organizations together and one belly button, so to speak, that's accountable for that within the OINT shop, besides the CIO and deputy CIO. So that's worked quite well. I think, obviously other parts of government have adopted to this, and it has been a successful model to follow for other parts of the organization. If you look back at what the concept that we had with this is to really make sure the veteran was able to be serviced. And we mentioned this, David mentioned this early, Secretary Wilkie's priority of servicing the veteran. It really speeds the market. So that's sort of the problem we were fixing at the time is, the speed to market for the solutions, the services that the veteran was receiving. So again, that's really applicable to any organization, right? So how do you do that in the same secure manner that you need to do, the same standards that you need to operate within, but how do you do that more timely? And that was sort of the concept and the ethos behind doing it. And industry obviously was well ahead of government at the time to actually collapsing these functions down within one organization. So it is refreshing to see, David, and hearing the progress many years later about the advancements and the ability to field more quickly is really the advantage to the mission. You're muted.
Sorry. Leading on from that question, how has that impacted NASA's software development, delivery system?
So we're adopting the same model here, and I'll give you a really good example of where we use sort of a real mission example of what we experienced with NASA during the pandemic. Early on, we did not have awareness of the virus's impact to our local centers. So we quickly brought in a team across the OCIO and developed a view into the data, the hospital data. We worked with other federal agencies at the time, HHS and CDC, to make sure we were getting normalized data. So back to David's point earlier is that you need data that's viable, that's accurate, that's meaningful. So we were able to work across the federal government through the CDO Council to show our medical community what was going on at the time and how the pandemic was affecting our localized area. Now, before that, we were actually doing this work on paper, and we actually stood up one of the first contact tracing applications across the federal space. So one of our team members, Allison Wolf, was just awarded an award across government for this work. So she was just recognized this week. So great work, Allison. But they were able to put a contact tracing app that was, again, done on paper early in the pandemic. And now that we see the case rates rising in where we are as a nation, that is even more critical. And then we're going to have our vaccine, so our vaccine distribution for the agency, we're going to track the same way. Matter of fact, we were just having conversations with our CIO this morning and then our chief medical officer this morning about tracking vaccines and how we distribute it. So you can see it's a real world example using DevSecOps in a way to field IT solutions quicker that, quite frankly, were just done on paper and not as accurate as it should be. And that's our first priority, Andrew, is really protecting our people in NASA. So.
Yeah. So if you had the ability to introduce AI and machine learning as
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have so not only with the pandemic exercises, but we have work around resume analysis, our intelligent global search. So we have really good heliophysics. So this is really the mission side of NASA, studying the sun. So we're bringing in AI methodology to do this. And then, really looking at ethical use of AI. So this is something that the DoD is really in advance. They did the rules of war and put this in place. So we're really looking at the ethical use of AI as well as bias. So how do we ensure that we're doing this in a secure fashion that we tease out all the biases possible out there? So it is a very exciting time to be using these tools and capabilities differently than we have in the past, and we are really making advancements throughout the agency in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Ron. The question for you, Colonel Bradshaw, getting the proper personnel to successfully create, deploy, and maintain IA is always a challenge. What are Army Futures Command trying to do to overcome this with programs like the Army AI Scholars program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have really four different levels of personnel that we are focused on. One is the user level, right? So those are people that come in who bring their own skills with them. So most of it's stuff they've learned at home, but they're very comfortable with coding, very comfortable with artificial intelligence and the use of analytics and computers to do their work. So we see those people as building probably homegrown solutions. Not that I would say that that's the best answer, but those are the kids that are tinkering around in the back room because they're tired of filling out a form. They're building their own solution to fill that form in and auto-generate it potentially. So we see them as one level of user, and then we have AI scholars and AI technicians, which we are calling cloud technicians. So we're really focused on that cloud native capability. So if you've worked any time in government or DoD, you understand that most of our technology, most of our capabilities are not cloud native. They are going to take some serious uplift to get them to that level of capability. So we've started to build AI cloud technicians that will help us with that provisioning of equipment, building of pipelines, and the entire resourcing of that cloud capability. So we have users, we have technicians, and then above that, I would say we have our AI scholars, and those are the folks that we are really focused on the data science side of the house and the data engineering side of the house. So those are the folks that are actually building the algorithms, they're building the databases, they're manipulating the data and munging that data into a useful format so we can actually run AI on top of that data. And then I would say the last one is the executive level, right? So those are the leaders that we see, again, making those multi-million-dollar decisions on systems that they may or may not ever touch, but they definitely have influence over those systems. So we're trying to build an executive level leadership course. In fact, we're running a course right now, a pilot course with Carnegie Mellon, that is allowing 2- and 3-star generals and senior executives to understand what it takes to actually be cloud native. What does it take to actually build algorithms that run and function? And then how do you build your manpower around those and organize your manpower around those functions so that you can effectively and efficiently use analytics to your advantage?
So likewise, what are some of the best practices you realized in training employees in AI?
So I would say you've got to be, you can't be averse to someone failing. So, as we bring folks into the Army, we pick them based on the skill set that they bring with them. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily AI or ML proficient. But what we try to do is go out and find those people based on their interest. Again, probably a user in a back room that someone had said, hey, this kid is really technical. We should use him in a different fashion. So we reach out, we try and grab those folks from organizations that they think are most technically capable. And then we run them. The technician course is roughly a 14-week course through Carnegie Mellon in partnership with them. And out of that, they come back with several certifications. So they have an Azure Cloud certification and some Microsoft certifications that they bring back with them. And then as far as the scholars go, again, we're reaching out to the big branches in the Army. So your infantry, your marine, or your air defense, your artillery, those branches, pulling in what they think are their most technical folks, training them over a year to really get them in tune with the algorithm development and the data management on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This may be a question to you all, and may end up being a question for Matt. I was going to ask, what infrastructure capabilities and engagement with industry or academic partners do you need to be successful? Maybe we'll start with, Colonel Brasser, you've talked about academia, but how about industry?
Yeah, so we currently reach out across multiple companies. Some of our thrust areas, one of our thrust areas, is automated threat recognition. So how do you autonomously move a vehicle or a robot down a road to identify potential threats? We are very, very closely partnered with multiple industrial or industry partners on that one, in partnership with Carnegie Mellon. So they're doing some of the AI while the industry partners are building out the robots. We're also building a data science platform that allows us to run from soup to nuts the entire AI and data analytics platform. So data at inception point all the way through data visualization and decision making. So we're partnered with industry on that one also, basically sitting side by side with their coders to help them on the development side, which is new for DoD. Typically we pay a contractor or pay someone to do the development for us, and then 6 months later they come back and say, here's your product. What we found that works better is partnering with them along the way. So take some of our technologically focused personnel, put them side by side with a contractor so they can code in stride with them and make adjustments as needed. We find that those products typically work better in the end and provide a better solution for us because we're able to right the ship, for lack of a better term, along the way.
So Andrew, I'll just weigh in on our aspect of partnering commercially. We have a resupply mission going up Saturday with one of our commercial partners, and that partnership is extremely important for us to rely on how we launch our craft now from U.S. soil for the first time in over 10 years. So how we're really doing this is looking at how we collaborate, looking at how we remove the barriers, organizational barriers that we have. Being a federal organization, we have very strict rules, what can come in and out. So look how we exchange engineering drawings and how we exchange our operational data and how we launch. It is a really big success story with the folks down in Kennedy are doing right now, launching, commercial craft through, we haven't, even during the pandemic, we really have met, the major milestones pretty much spot on, and still launching and still meeting the mission that we have to do. So what does this mean, for AI and how we work together? I think we're taking the conventional boundaries and looking at it in a different way and making sure we can collaborate, making sure we can exchange ideas electronically, digitally native, and work in a different manner right now. So that is really crucial for us, crucial for NASA's future to work in this way. And that partnership, that commercial crew partnership, is really essential for how we need to work. So really like what I'm hearing, what the Army's doing on some things. It's really, we get as much of these panels hearing what others are doing and exchanging ideas as I'm sure others that are listening to us do. So I really appreciate and want to learn more about how folks are doing this. But for NASA, that is a critical element in how we work, that commercial partnership.
Yeah, thanks.
We're doing the same thing at VA. We're working very closely with our partners, whether it's on the software development side or with our tool vendors like Science Logic, Dynatrace, ServiceNow, working to integrate, pairing up contractors with our own staff personnel to really share knowledge and get expertise quickly in place. We, even on the hardware and on-prem side, we expanded our telework capacity as part of the COVID effort, rapidly increasing our on-prem capacity in conjunction with our cloud to be able to triple or almost quadruple our telework capacity for the COVID response. And we did that as part of Ron mentioned with our DevSecOps effort that started when he was here. It's really matured. We managed to do that in a matter of weeks and maybe months, where it would have taken years potentially before. So it's really an advanced capability that we're building across the board, whether it's, as I said, software, hardware. Everything that we're doing is really maturing that way, and partnering with our commercial partners has been key.
Yeah, I think that's a really impressive story, David. The scaling up of all the telework. You're well positioned with the telemedicine type capabilities you have within the medical community, but I hear there are hundreds of thousands of additional users coming online over that early days.
It really is. We're now doing some days more telemedicine consults than we are on-prem consults based on the capacity we built out as part of COVID. That was in addition to the telework. We launched our Care 2 environment, was doubled our telehealth capability in a matter of months by expanding into our Amazon cloud with our VAEC. So it was a huge effort to push, and we also increased our on-prem capacity in parallel to that. So it was an amazing surge that we put together, and it took everybody really working together as a team, both VA staff, contractors, and industry partners to do that.
Yeah, I think there's incredible things you can do for the VA in your capacity. I came from the image processing domain in medical imaging, and I ended up, to Matt's point, working in the TSA looking for bombs in bags instead of blood on the brain. But all the technologies are very similar. They need a huge amount of compute power, and they need a lot of data, in order to learn and get better. And AI is dependent on that. But David, when you bring the compute power to the image archive, Vista Imaging in the VA, there's amazing things we can do with AI to understand the trends in tumor development and whatnot.
Yeah, we've got a lot of teams working across our operational space to look at things like that and other things to use machine learning and AI ops for just incident response, for example, or reducing our mean time to resolution and be able to deliver service faster or triage incidents when they occur from an IT standpoint to rapidly resolve them and get things back in service. It's been a real big push from our senior leadership to really put that enterprise approach from monitoring to incident management to triage and have a consistent message from our executive ranks all the way down to our IT personnel on the tip of the spear.
You know, in terms of AI ops and data analytics, what is the major success story that you've had? You mentioned Science Logic earlier as an industry partner. You know, I imagine that they've had, you know, some early successes that you can talk about.
Well, sure. We started over a year ago with a proof of value with Science Logic, which has now grown into a full-blown implementation, and we're really taking a kind of a build a foundation and then crawl, walk, run. So right now we're focused on getting an enterprise-grade installation in place and working with our ServiceNow team and others to build and enrich our CMDB so we get the data right up front, because really we don't want to do a lot of rework, like charging out and maybe getting it wrong the first time. We're trying to make sure we have a good data foundation in place. And then we're going to start building on that initially with incident and integration and enterprise monitoring, and then going, you know, beyond that with maybe automated response and diagnostics, and then maybe you know, behavioral correlation with the Science Logic tool. So it's and really we have a lot of other tools in our environment. We're, as large as we are, we have the benefit of having a lot of great vendors we're working with, and using Science Logic as that glue to integrate all those together with APIs is going to be fantastic capability as we build it out over the next year or so.
Yeah, good luck with CMDBs. I know that they're always a challenge. So from the Dell perspective, you know, what do you think you can do to help these agencies?
I think you know, from our perspective, we can bring the industry knowledge and all the research that we put into AI and ML and AI ops framework. We've got a lot of smart folks. We've got a lot of use cases that we can bring and help you design something that's gonna work in your environment. I did want to touch on, you know, one of the things you talk about partnership. You know, the White House launched a COVID-19 High Performance Computing Consortium back when COVID launched or came out. Dell became immediately involved in that, and TAC, who's one of our largest customers, the Texas Advanced Computing Center here in Austin, Texas, is a big player in that. So we've been extremely supportive of that supercomputer and what we can do to help with the modeling and some of the things that they're trying to simulate and drive on. So just an example of how we're partnering and try to help in the greater effort there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. You know, I can say from experience, you know, I've seen some huge advantages in the government space and the private sector from collaboration. So it's, you know, I'm a huge advocate of these meetings and getting together afterwards, industry forums to advance our mission. You know, we're all working towards the same aim ultimately. So we're out of time. It's my job now to thank everybody for the panel. It's been great conversations. And I'm going to pass over to Mike Hoffman, who's going to close up.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you to all of our panelists this morning. Fantastic event. We really covered quite a bit of topics there and really got a lot of voices from multiple agencies there. So it was wonderful to talk about some of the challenges and solutions that everyone's taking on right now in a very unique environment with COVID-19. So with that, as Andrew said, that wraps up our morning. It also actually wraps up our event schedule for the year of 2020. And what I wanted to do is just thank everybody for joining us. A lot of folks who registered for today's event have taken part in multiple events throughout the year. And what a year it's been, certainly, where a lot of our events started out this year. We had a full slate of in-person events, and my team worked really hard to make that pivot, which I'm sure everybody who's watching this morning has had to do in their own jobs of taking on this quarantine and moving quickly from in-person events to these virtual events, which we've gotten a great audience. We've been able to have quite a bit of participation across government agencies and with tons of experts on topics such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and then DevSecOps like this morning. I know I'm missing a few, but too many to list as we've gone through. So I really wanted to thank my team for this, my entire team for working as hard as they have to making that pivot and making this a reality, because it's been an extremely successful event docket for us in 2020. And it hasn't been easy, but we worked really hard to hopefully put together some of the top experts in these different areas and help you learn about these areas. And at the end of the day, that's our mission, is to really put forth the different challenges that government agencies are facing, and then talking about the solutions that they're using. And some of them had to do with COVID-19, such as the different telehealth issues, working from home, and then moving forward with different areas like DevSecOps and how they're taking advantage of technologies like that to help move government agencies forward. So thank you very much. With that said, too, we have worked hard to set up our 2021 docket. We already have some of our events for January through March on the website. So please take a look at that. Our next one is January 28th, focused on health IT. So we're really excited to have everybody take part. And as we move into the new year, look forward to continuing to grow this audience. So with that said, thank you very much. Oh, one last thing. Please also, I want to give a shout out to our podcasts. We got a great number of podcasts planned here in the next months. If you haven't already subscribed to ours, we have quite a few shows that you can find on anywhere that you find your podcast, whether it be Spotify or Apple or Google Play. Download them, subscribe. We have GovCast, HealthCast, Cybercast, as well as the Agile Advocate, which applies it directly to the topic that we had this morning and afternoon. So thank you very much to everybody for joining us and being a part of it. Have a good day.